The rooftop was glittering with the soft hum of laughter, clinking glasses, and the distant sounds of the city below, but none of it reached me. I stood at the edge, looking out over the sprawling lights of Manhattan, each one a testament to a world I didn't quite belong to, no matter how much I tried to fit in. I had everything they said I should want: success, wealth, influence. But there was this hollow ache in my chest that the brightest lights of this party couldn't fill. Surrounded by people who whispered secrets behind expensive champagne glasses, there I stood, a woman built by her own hands, yet abandoned by the very people who should have been by my side. My family, the ones who should have been proud of me, the ones I longed for approval from but never received. As I felt the weight of the cold night air against my skin, the chattering noise from the party seemed to fade away, as if the walls were closing in on me. I inhaled, letting the crispness cut through the silence. No one cared to know how I felt. It's not that I wasn't part of this world. I was. But it wasn't the world I had ever truly wanted. They never really cared. Not about me. Not about my success, I thought to myself. The words cut deeper than they should have. I thought I had moved past this. Thought that all the years of sacrifice, all the times I showed up, even when I was the invisible one, had prepared me for this moment. But here I was, once again staring at the ghost of my childhood, the one where I was pushed aside by the very people who should have been proud of the woman I had become. The world down below seemed so distant, like a place I could never fully be part of, a place that would never welcome me in. I heard the soft murmur of voices behind me, but I couldn't make out the words. A flash of movement caught my eye, and I turned slightly. There, among the sea of high society faces, was Eleanor, my mother. She caught my gaze, and for a second, there was that familiar glint of something cold in her eyes. She wasn't looking at me with pride or warmth. She didn't care to see the woman I had become. "You know," she said, her voice casual, but the words sliced through me like a razor. "You're just a small part of this family." I wanted to scream. I should have screamed, but instead, I clamped down on my anger, forcing my face into a neutral mask. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of seeing me crack. "You never asked. You assumed," I muttered under my breath, my words barely a whisper. My jaw clenched. The comment wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a careless slip. This was intentional. This was her way of reminding me, and herself, that I was nothing more than an afterthought in the very family that I'd spent my life trying to please. How long had I been fighting for their acceptance? How long had I been pushing myself to the edge, hoping one day they would see me for who I truly was? And yet here I was, still fighting for scraps of love, still invisible in their eyes. The tears burned in the back of my throat, but I wouldn't let them fall. Not now. Not in front of these people. They didn't deserve that kind of vulnerability. They never had. I excused myself, moving towards a private room to escape the noise, the people, the expectations. Alone in the silence, I stared at myself in the mirror. I wasn't invisible. I wasn't forgotten. They had erased me, and now I was the one deciding to walk away from it all. I didn't need their approval. I'd built this on my own. Every step, every accomplishment, it was mine, not theirs. Not ever again. In the quiet of that room, I realized that this wasn't just about me finally accepting who I had become. It was about accepting that the people I had tried so hard to please would never give me the love I needed. And that was something I couldn't change. I turned to leave, but my phone buzzed in my pocket. The message flashed on the screen, an urgent message from my financial advisor. My heart skipped a beat. There was an issue with my company's assets, a discrepancy. The email described an investigation into something that felt off. I stood there, frozen, staring at the words on the screen. My mind raced between my family's betrayal and the sudden threat to everything I had built. I didn't just have my family to fight anymore. I had the very foundation of my life at risk. The weight on my shoulders felt unbearable. I needed air. I needed space. I walked to the balcony, hoping the cold would numb my mind for just a moment. The city was alive, its energy pulsing below me. But I felt like I was standing on the edge of it all, unable to connect. Alone in a crowd. Is this really what it's all for? I whispered, more to myself than to anyone around. To be alone in a crowd? To prove myself to people who never asked. I shook my head, the weight of it all pressing on my chest. This was the life I had built, a life of empty success and quiet desperation. I'd spent so much time trying to gain their approval, trying to prove I was worthy of love, worthy of recognition. But tonight, I realized it wasn't worth it. And that was when the phone buzzed again, pulling me back from the dark thoughts swirling in my head. It was Rachel, my sister. We need to talk about your inheritance. Things are getting out of hand. I stared at the screen, my heart sinking. I hadn't expected this call, but I knew it was coming. The dining room felt almost too warm, the rich smells of turkey and pumpkin pie mixing with the clatter of dishes and silverware. The old estate was as grand as ever, with its high ceilings and dark wood paneling, the kind of place that belonged in a period drama. But today it felt like a stage for a different kind of performance, one I never signed up for. I set the last plate on the table, my fingers brushing the fine china. The familiar sound of laughter and idle chatter surrounded me, but it felt distant, muffled. The warmth of the room contrasted sharply with the coldness gnawing at my insides. I hadn't been home in years, and yet this place still felt like the same cage I'd grown up in. It was a luxurious prison. I should have felt proud to be here, surrounded by family, celebrating the holiday with the kind of abundance most people could only dream of. But it wasn't mine to enjoy. This dinner was nothing more than a facade, a carefully crafted illusion of togetherness. As I carefully arranged the silverware, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I glanced down at the screen, and the name Rachel flashed across it. My heart skipped a beat, but I didn't answer. I wasn't ready for this. Not yet. I let it ring out and buried my phone back in my purse. The soft murmur of conversation from the other room grew louder. I knew what was coming. I could feel it building in the air like the storm before the rain. "Vivienne, can you help with this?" My mother's voice broke through my thoughts. Eleanor stood at the end of the table, her face frozen in that expression I knew all too well. Polite, distant, and completely unfeeling. I nodded, pushing my emotions aside. Tonight wasn't about me. It was about them, about keeping up appearances. I'd learned that the hard way. But Rachel wasn't going to let me off that easily. A few minutes later, she approached me. Her eyes were narrowed, her face flushed with anger. "Vivienne," she hissed, her voice barely above a whisper, "I know what you've been hiding." I felt my stomach drop. My breath caught in my chest. "What are you talking about?" I managed to say, my voice calm, too calm for the storm brewing inside me. Rachel's hands clenched into fists at her sides. "You've been holding out on us, haven't you? After everything, this is how you repay us." Her words stung, but I didn't let her see it. "I don't know what you're talking about, Rachel." I kept my voice level, my face neutral, despite the fury building inside me. This wasn't the time. Not yet. But the anger was like a tidal wave, threatening to break free. Rachel scoffed, her eyes narrowing with disdain. "Oh, don't play innocent with me. I've seen the financial documents, Vivienne. The things you've been hiding from us, from the family. You've been living like a queen, while the rest of us have barely been scraping by." I froze. My heart raced. I could feel the weight of her words. But it wasn't just her that I had to contend with. It was the whole damn family. They'd never seen me as anything but a tool, a means to an end, a source of wealth they could leech from. Before I could respond, Eleanor stepped in, her voice cold as ice. "Rachel, enough!" she snapped, her eyes flicking to me. "Vivienne, you've made your fortune. But if you truly want to be part of this family, you'll give what's rightfully ours." The words felt like a slap to the face, each one a blow that cut deeper than any physical wound. I should have argued, should have screamed, but instead I stood my ground, refusing to show any more weakness. "I've given enough," I said through clenched teeth. "You don't get to take more from me." The room fell silent for a moment, the weight of the confrontation hanging thick in the air. I could hear the low hum of voices from the other side of the house. But all I could focus on was the coldness in Eleanor's eyes, the same look she always wore when she was preparing to tear me down. For the first time in my life, I felt the full extent of her manipulation. She had been controlling me for years, using me as her personal pawn, and I had allowed it. But that stopped now. I could feel the final blow coming. And when it did, it was worse than anything I had imagined. "If you want to continue to be seen as part of this family, Vivienne," Eleanor declared, her voice icy and unyielding, "you'll pay $1.2 million. That's what's rightfully ours. You owe us." The words landed like a punch, knocking the breath out of me. I stood there for a moment, too stunned to speak. The entire family watched, their eyes boring into me, expecting me to fold. But I couldn't do it. Not anymore. I stood up, slowly, deliberately, and without a word, I turned and walked away from the table. The chairs scraped across the floor, the clinking of cutlery fading into the background. The room fell into an uncomfortable silence, but I didn't care. I was done. I was done trying to please them, done with the emotional blackmail they'd been feeding me for years. I walked straight out of the room, through the hallway, until I found myself standing in front of the door to my childhood room, the door that had once been my sanctuary, but now it felt like a prison. I pushed open the door, stepping into the room that still carried the weight of years of rejection. The family photos on the walls, the ones that used to bring me comfort, now felt like reminders of a past I was ready to leave behind. I walked to the window, my breath fogging the glass as I stared out at the estate. I gave up my youth to build what they never saw, never appreciated. I murmured, the words barely a whisper in the stillness of the room. I wasn't the little girl they had abandoned anymore. I wasn't the one they could manipulate and control. I had built this life on my own, and I wasn't going to let them destroy it. Just then, my phone buzzed. It was my lawyer. My heart skipped. This was it, the moment I'd been waiting for. I answered, my voice steady. The lawyer gave me an update on the inheritance, confirming what I already knew. There was an investigation into my family's manipulations. They couldn't hide it anymore. I hung up the phone, the weight of the news sinking in. I had the legal clarity I needed. Now I could finally take action. I turned toward the door, the decision I had made weighing heavily on my shoulders. But it wasn't fear that I felt. It was determination. I wasn't afraid of them anymore. I stood in front of the door, staring at the house that had once felt like home. Now it felt like a prison. "I won't fight you," I said aloud, my voice steady calm. "But I will stand for what's right, I took a deep breath and walked back into the dining room. The room fell silent when I entered. The tension was palpable. They were waiting for me to break, to beg, but I wasn't going to. "I've been silent for too long," I said, my voice firm. "Now it's my turn to speak. I will no longer be part of this toxic family dynamic." The shock on their faces was everything I needed to see. I wasn't just speaking for myself. I was speaking for the little girl who never got to be heard, the woman who had spent her life trying to please them. And for the first time I felt free. I turned away from them, walking out of the room with my head held high. This is where it ends. I've given enough. Now I'm choosing me. I picked up the phone, calling my financial team, making sure my family would no longer have access to a penny of my wealth. It was done. I was free. The early morning air was crisp as I walked through the park near my apartment, each step a contrast to the chaos I had left behind. The soft rustling of leaves and the gentle chirping of birds felt distant, as if the world itself was holding its breath. I was alone here, and yet, for the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of peace. The park, with its quiet beauty, was a refuge, a momentary escape from the weight of my past. The smell of damp earth filled my lungs, grounding me. I was free, or at least I was finally beginning to understand what that word truly meant. The ties I had severed, the choices I had made, felt like a weight lifting off my chest. But there was also something else lingering, a somber realization that I had just walked away from everything I had ever known. My family, my legacy, my old life, it was all gone. As I walked along the path, the breeze touched my face, and for the first time, I didn't feel the need to look over my shoulder. My phone buzzed in my pocket, snapping me back to reality. I didn't need to look at the screen to know who it was. My financial advisor had called yesterday to schedule a meeting, and it was time to finalize everything. I had to do it. This wasn't just about cutting ties. It was about claiming my own future, my own power. I found a bench by the water and sat down, staring at the still surface. My hands shook, but I steadied them on my lap. Taking a deep breath, I dialed the number, my heart thumping in my chest. Vivienne, the advisor's voice came through the phone, warm yet professional. "The legal proceedings are moving forward. You're officially untethered. No more obligations. No more ties to your family's claims." "Good," I whispered, more to myself than to him. "I can't keep doing this. My family's poison has seeped into every part of my life. It ends now." The weight of those words settled heavily in the pit of my stomach. It was official. The last connection to my family was gone, and I was free. But even as the relief washed over me, there was an emptiness I couldn't ignore. The kind of emptiness you feel when everything you've known, everything you've been tied to, is suddenly no longer yours to carry. The phone call ended, and I sat in the park for a few more minutes, letting the silence soak in. My phone buzzed again. I already knew what it was. "Lucas." I had been expecting this. I answered, my voice steady but tight. "Lucas, you're really doing this, aren't you?" His voice was a mix of frustration and desperation. "Vivienne, you can't just walk away from this. We're family. You'll regret this, I swear." I closed my eyes, a deep sigh escaping my lips. The familiarity of his tone, the way he always tried to pull me back into their web, made my skin crawl. "I won't regret it, Lucas," I said, my voice cold and resolute. "You should have known I would do this when I finally woke up." There was silence on the other end, and for a moment I wondered if he understood. Maybe, just maybe, he could see how deeply entwined we all had been in this toxic dance. But I knew better. Lucas had always been too caught up in the idea of family, of loyalty, to see beyond his own selfish needs. He had been the perfect puppet, just like me. The difference was, I was done being manipulated. "I can't help you anymore," I added before hanging up. The phone buzzed again, but this time I didn't even check it. I didn't need to. I let my mind drift back to a time long before any of this chaos. The day my father passed away. His death had been inevitable, but his last words to me still haunted me. "You've always been the strong one, Vivienne," his voice echoed in my memory, soft yet heavy with meaning. But strength isn't about silence. It's about choosing your own path. I had chosen a path, hadn't I? A path where I stopped silencing myself for the sake of others. A path where I chose my own happiness, my own future. For the first time, his words felt like a gift, not a burden. The past was behind me now, and as painful as it had been, it was also what made me strong. And I needed that strength now more than ever. The world outside my window seemed to shift, and before I knew it, I was standing up, walking away from the park and back to my apartment. It was time to face what came next. An hour later, I sat across from a potential business partner. We were discussing a new venture, one that could change the course of my company's future. The weight of my family's influence was nothing but a distant memory as I spoke with confidence. "You have what it takes to lead this, Vivienne," the man said, his voice smooth, respectful. "Your vision aligns with ours. This is the kind of opportunity that can make you an industry leader." I felt the rush of excitement, the validation I had craved for years. My family had never seen my worth. But this man, this opportunity did. It was more than just money or success. It was the recognition of my potential, something I had been denied for far too long. I smiled, a real smile, one that reached my eyes. "I'm ready." The deal was sealed, and just like that, I had made my mark. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was thriving. But as the deal finalized, my phone buzzed again. This time it was Eleanor. She had come to my office, uninvited, with that cold, calculating look I knew so well. "I did everything for you, Vivienne," she said, her voice dripping with false sincerity. "This is how you repay me? You'll have nothing without us." I stood up slowly, my chair scraping the floor. The words, sharp and venomous, didn't sting like they once would have. I had heard it all before, but this time it didn't matter. "You never did anything for me, Eleanor. You only did it for yourself. I'm done." With that, I turned away, leaving her standing in my office, staring after me with wide eyes. I didn't need her approval. Not now, not ever. I let out a breath as I left the building, stepping into the crisp evening air. For the first time, I felt like I could breathe again. I went home, locked the door behind me, and sat in silence. It was time to let go of everything that had weighed me down. The tears came, quietly, softly. I cried not for the family I had lost, but for the woman I had become. "It's all finally over," I whispered, feeling the weight of the past lift. "I'm finally free." I sat there, alone but not lonely. The last of my emotional barriers had crumbled, and I was standing in the rawness of it all. I'm free. The days ahead were uncertain, but for the first time, I was ready to face them. It wasn't about what I had lost. It was about what I had gained. I had found myself, and that was enough.